This project is really quick. We're going to be using one of these round signs. You can get any wood round sign from the Dollar Tree in their craft section or a seasonal one you have on hand already, some fabric, and then this gathered together sign that was wood that I found in the fall section. Now I'm going to add on a lot of glue onto my sign. I want to cover up this beach vibes. It's one I had on hand and I'm not going to use it for summer, so I thought this is perfect to use for this beautiful door sign. I went ahead and glued it on, laid it nice and flat as much as I could with the fabric, and now I'm going to come around with my scissors, trimming away at the edges. I wanted to give it a little bit of a distressed look, so I'm using my sanding block just to go around the edges to rough up the end fibers, so it adds a little bit of texture and depth. And now I did not like the cornucopia. It's not that I don't like cornucopias, I just didn't like that it had like a printed image on it. So I went ahead and used some old beat up scissors. I cut that part off and then I removed the string. Now because it had a hole on the T, I'm going to just fill it up with some hot glue. I wait for it to dry just a little bit where it's cool to the touch, and then I pull off the extra glue that's kind of popping over the sides. Once it was dry, I put a little bit extra paint right into that dolloped hole area where I put the hot glue. And then I let that dry for a second, and then I continue on painting all the rest of the word, getting all over with a beautiful chocolate brown. Now to hang up this sign, I always like to have a really nice handle when I'm hanging up my signs. So I'm going to take some of this rope. I unfrayed the ends of the rope because I want to make sure this doesn't just pop off. I'm adding on some glue first, then the rope, then some more glue. And to have a nice finished look, I've got a little piece of drop cloth fabric that's just a scrap, and I'm going to put that right over it. Now let's make a beautiful bow that is super simple. You get the length that you want for the size of bow that you're going to be making. I am going to zigzag back and forth where there are 2 loops on each side, and then there is a ending tail on the opposite sides. Once I have zigzagged back and forth almost like a ribbon candy, I'm going to pinch the middle together, and then I'm going to take this piece of twine. You can use a zip tie, you can use a twisty little piece of wire, whatever you want to use, you tie off the middle. Now I have also made bows like this where they're longer layers of the zigzag back and forth, and I've just taken the bow and actually tied it right in the middle by actually tying the ribbon in a knot. But it makes the easiest bow, and then you just fluff it out. Now I'm ready to glue on my gathered together sign, and I want to make sure I work fast because I want to put enough glue so it sticks. I don't want the glue to seep out on the sides, but I also want to make sure it's got a nice sticky hold. So you could technically use a little bit of E6000 with this if you want to make the glue, make sure it's everywhere and it doesn't dry too quickly. Hot glue sometimes can dry too quickly on these cursive wood pieces. But now I'm going to just simply add on my big bow that we made, and I'm going to really beef up this bow. I'm going to add on some greenery from a pick that has these pumpkins on it. I love the leaves and the pumpkins. So I'm adding on 3 green leaves. I love the citrus color. It brings out the nice yellow and buttery tones in the fabric. I'm adding on 2 at the top, 1 underneath the bow, and then I'm going to add in a pumpkin. Now I want to make sure that pumpkin sticks, so I kind of cut a hole a little bit in the pumpkin and then added my glue and then put it down so it went into the pumpkin and didn't just pop off. And to really bring forth the texture of that gathered together wood sign, I'm going to take my sanding block and just sand over it just ever so slightly to bring up the edges, and that's it. It is such a quick project to make and great if you have a whole bunch of leftover fabric on hand. This project is so incredibly easy. All crafter levels are welcomed to this one. Now, what I like to do when I get books home from the Dollar Tree, I just take them and dunk them in water and then I set them outside on a table in my backyard and I let them air dry, and that's how I get that vintage look to my papers. I'm going to take some paper from a book, 2 pieces of cardstock, and some twine and a Sharpie marker, and we're going to make the most beautiful banner that says fall across it. I'm trimming off around the edges of the text paper from the book, and then I'm going to create a dovetail cut at the bottom. I do not recommend you using a book that's a favorite of yours. This is just a $1.25 book from the Dollar Tree that I'm never going to read. It's kind of funny. My son loves to read the text on these books to see what the book is about whenever I make these text crafts with book papers. He cracks me up. He's like, Mom, do you know what they say in this book? They're talking about aliens and you're writing fall on it. Anyway, he always makes me laugh. I'm like, well, you're not supposed to read the text, just look at the word fall. So I guess you could be kind of picky about what it says on each piece of paper. I don't really do that. I just know that I'm going to make a cute banner using the text paper. Let me know, would you be the kind of person who would read the text that is actually on a book piece of paper? I'm curious. Now, I'm using my Sharpie marker and I'm just freehanding this. I'm creating the word fall, F-A-L-L, but you can put whatever you want. You can make it where it says autumn. You can make it where it says harvest. It is so endless, and it's pretty inexpensive to create this thing. All it is really just a book, some scrap things. You probably even have old books at home that you're not even going to use anymore. You're going to donate them. Dunk it in some water and you'll have some beautiful vintage paper. So once I got through all of my letters, and I'm just freehanding them, I'm kind of looking at my phone over to the side at an old English font to kind of help me along as I'm going. After I'm done doing all of the letter work, I'm now going to take those papers, use my adhesive, glue them onto the cardstock to really strengthen the pieces of paper. Once I had all of them glued down, I'm now going to take my scissors and cut them out along the edge where you don't see the cardstock, but you only see the text paper from the book. Cut them all out, and then we're going to move on to bringing it together on the twine. I'm going to use my Craftober, but if you have a hole punch, that works too. Whatever you have on hand to create little holes on the opposite sides at the top of that letter card that we just made. And then this is how I am going to thread them on. So I have a long piece of twine, and I'm going to do a double knot on each whole side of these lettered cards. I'm just going to do one knot, pull it nice and tight, but not too much, it's going to rip through the paper. A double knot, and then I have a long tail to be able to hang it up from the fall side of the banner. I'm going to run the twine along the back side of the card, come out through the front side, just like you can see here. I'm going to pull it tight, not too much again to rip the paper, and then I'm going to tie one knot, and then I'm going to tie the second knot. This is going to keep the banner pieces from sliding all over the place and moving and shifting on you. I just like when banners stay in place and they look how you want them to look, but you don't have to do the double knot. You can just zigzag that twine on in there and it'll hold them too. You can even put a little piece of tape like on the back of it to keep the twine from letting the card move around. You can do that too and skip the knots. It's whatever is easiest for you. But you can see here I'm now tying on the A, and I'm having some spacing in there because I want it to not be too close. You could also rip some fabric strips and hang that or like tie that in between each letter card. That could be really pretty too. If you have some fabric on hand, you want to dress up the fall banner even more. It's whatever you want to do with your banner, and you just have fun being creative in your craft room. That's what I always like to encourage. You take the ideas that I'm sharing and then run with them for your own home and decorate with them however you want, at the colors you want, at the texture you want, at the distressing that you want, whatever it is. Now you can see here that I'm done tying all of the knots and it's all come together, and I'm just going to do some distressing with my black ink pad. I'm just going to go all along the edges to really define those papers. And I realized that if I go very, very gentle, grazing over the top of the papers, I can bring in some ink onto the texture of that paper having being wet. I think it's so pretty adding in that extra paper, that extra texture of the ink. I'm very gently just grazing over the top, and it's picking up all of those imperfections of the paper being wet in the past. I had all of these random pieces sitting on my craft table, and I thought I'm going to bring them all together, these little scraps, and make them into something so darling. I have this wood plank, this little metal handle I get from Amazon. I'll link it in my description box. Some leftover fall florals, and I'm going to stain this wood plank. I want to give it a vintage rustic look to it, where something that when you think of Apothecary, you think of all kinds of florals, especially going into the fall season. I thought this would look so pretty if we stained it a nice dark color. And then I'm going to come on with some white paint. I did about 2 layers, 3 layers, I can't remember, but I wanted to make sure the white was nice and strong on it. And I did do a little bit sanding. I forgot to show that part, but not too much, just enough just to like make the edges look kind of faded so it looks old and vintage. I marked my holes for my handle, got out my Craftober, punched my 2 holes, and then to put the handle on, you could just glue it in place, but I really like to make things that are sustainable here in my craft room. So I'm going to add on some of these tiny little brads that I had on hand, and then I'm going to just pop those into the holes, flip it over, and then open up the brad legs and glue them in place. This is going to really lock it in so that it doesn't have any issues with it coming loose or falling off over time. Now, once that was all locked into place, I can move on to my little tiny florals that I just didn't want to throw away. We have a lot of stuff like this in our craft rooms, do we not? Where we're like, I don't want to throw that away, I'll use it for something. And then it just goes into a tub and we never use it. So whenever I'm working on projects, I always like to try to make something like this where I have just these little pieces. Instead of just sticking in a box, let me just do one more project. It'll take me like 10 minutes to make it, and I have something beautiful. I can give it away as a gift. I can use it for decor in my home, whatever I would like. Now I binded all of those florals together with some twine, cut off the extra, and then to really finish the look, I love these garden tags. If you've been here for a while, you know that I was obsessed with these for years. I am going to add one of those on because it gives it that apothecary look, which is so pretty, and that's it. Super easy, made from scraps, cost me basically nothing. For these supplies, we're going to be using 2 of these orange wired baskets I found painted orange in the home section, this wood log from outside that I have from my yard, 4 zip ties, and then any fabric of your liking. We're also going to be using a 2-inch wood round. You can see it right there on my table. And we're going to drill into this wood log. Now I'm keeping my hand far back. I'm keeping my drill leaning onto the table so I don't have any loss of control, and I'm taking my time just drilling through the wood log. I'm now going to take my Craftober, punch a simple hole in it, and then I'm going to add some hot glue and work quickly because I don't want my glue to dry. I added the hot glue. I'm bringing on the wood log. I put in a screw into that hole, into the wood round, and then I'm going to screw it all together locking it in place. Now you don't want it to be too tight where the wire is not going to be between the log and the wood round. We're locking it into place so that it has a nice hold. I can't stand making projects where they just fall apart, like there's a top or stem, someone picks it up and then poop, it just comes right off. I don't like making projects like that. I like making things that are going to last, which is why I decided to bring out my drill for this project. Now I'm going to really lock it in, that it's screwed in place, and I'm going to add on lots of hot glue over the wire onto the wood round. This is going to make sure this stem never falls off on you. We like to make quality projects here in my studio because I just am a believer when you make it long term, then it just looks high end. Now, while the glue is hot, I'm adding moss all over the top of it, a whole bunch, and I pull away the excess I don't want. Then we're going to flip it over and add glue onto the wood round, and then I'm going to tap the fabric in at the top so it helps conceal that wood round on the bottom side so you don't see it. And then I'm going to add my fabric in, and you can add in whatever fabric you want. I do regret not adding a little bit more white burlap into the pumpkin. I wish I had filled it a little bit more, but there's a whole bunch of holes in it, so if you decide to add more fabric, you can always go back in and add more. But this is so fun because you can pick whatever fabric you want inside the pumpkin, and it really dresses up this wire basket. Now I'm going to take 4 zip ties, and on the counter opposites, 4 sides, I'm going to zip it together. And then I want to conceal those zip ties. I don't want to see them, and I also didn't want to get out my paint this day. You could definitely paint them, but I've decided I really like the idea of taking twine, wrapping it around. You could also use yarn. You could use yarn, you could use a berry garland, you could use a whole bunch of different things. I'm going to wrap my twine all around the zip tie to conceal it. Once I've gone around enough times and I like the way that it looks, I can't see that black zip tie, I'm going to go ahead and tie a double knot. I want to leave the tails on that double knot, the leftover of the twine, just a little bit long to make a thicker bow with thicker stems. And then I'm going to do a darling bow, and I'm going to glue that right on. And I'm doing this to all 4 sides of these zip ties. And the finished look, it's such a large decor piece, and it's so easy to make and so darling for the fall season. I found this ring sitting around from a leftover mason jar, and I thought it would be so cute to turn this ring into a sunflower. And then I dreamed up an even further project. Why don't I turn it into something I can hang on a doorknob, because I love dressing up doorknobs in my home. I'm going to take that ring, cut out some of this brown and white polka dot fabric. I cut it down to size, and then I add hot glue inside the rim of the mason jar lid, and I'm going to tap that fabric down along the rim. Beware on this part, the rim from the metal of the mason jar can warm up. So just move quickly. The hot glue on the metal warms up the metal. So I'm just keeping my fingers away where the hot glue is going to be at, and I'm just taking my time. Now once that was all glued into place, I flipped it over, I cut off all that extra fabric in there that I didn't need, and I'm going to use my Craftober to punch 2 holes so I can add in wire. This wire is going to allow it to hang up on a doorknob or a hook in your home or a dresser drawer with a cute knob on it. Friends, I love little details like this because I think, and I've said this a million times, this makes a house a home. When you have little personality things like this scattered throughout your home, and you can do it to whatever style you want. It can be more modern, it could be more boho, it could be more farmhouse, whatever your style is, it's so cute. Now you can see here I just twisted that ribbon around, creating my little handle for the sunflower. And now I took that ring from the mason jar, I laid it on top of fabric, and I traced the circle, the size of the ring. I cut out a piece of fabric, and where the circle is, I'm going to fold it once and fold it twice so the center of the circle is at that point. It's kind of like making a snowflake, except for we're going to make petals for a sunflower. Now you cut out your petals however you want. You can make them smooth and loopy. You can make them where they have a peak on it like I'm doing. You can make them long and pointy. The point is that you can make your fabric flower into whatever kind of fabric flower you would like. Isn't this so cute and so fun? And it's so versatile. And if you go to craft shows, these could be very cute, where you can make a whole bunch of them that are super affordable and sell them for a decent price at your craft fairs that you go to. And they're just so cute when you hang them up on a darling knob or a hook somewhere in your home. Love these. I love this project. I really hope you try this one. Now I'm going to double up my flower, so I'm going to do one smaller and one bigger of that same snowflake process, folding it 2 times, cutting out the petals. And then where that ring was, where we put the pencil line from tracing the mason jar lid, we're going to put hot glue and then put the lid right on that hot glue. Now before the glue dries, flip it over and pinch the fabric quickly before it dries, so that way it has little petal peaks where it's gathered together a little bit, and it adds some more dimension and personality to the petals. I did it not just to the first one, but also to the second one, you'll see here in a second. But I'm just adding some glue onto the second one, centering the smaller flower right onto the larger flower, and then move quickly, pinch those peaks so that you create that texture on the petal. And it does move quickly, so make sure when you're pinching, you don't take too long in between pinching this, because hot glue can dry, depending on the temperature in your craft room, pretty quickly. Now once I had all of my peaks and I liked the texture of the petals and the flower, and by the way, you can put as many layers of this as you want, and you can even add on some faux flowers from the Dollar Tree. We could leave it like that, or we could take it a step further, which is what I'm going to do. I have one of these garden tags. You know I love these. If you've been here, you know I love these little garden tags. I'm going to glue one of those on because I think it has a very farmhouse feel to it. I'm going to add on some of these foam leaves from a previous pick that I had just sitting here on my craft table. Friends, I find all of these little doodads sitting around my craft room, and why not turn them into something and make a beautiful project with it? Then I'm going to add a gingham green and white bow. This gingham ribbon, I usually get it around Christmas time from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to tie a bow and glue that right onto that wooden tag. And then how can I help myself? I love buttons. I love buttons. I'm going to add on 2 green buttons, one layered on top of the other. And I'm going to put that right in the center of the bow. This was the easiest project, made from a whole bunch of scraps, some fabric that I had on hand, things that were just sitting around that I could make into something beautiful. And it seriously took me, this project, probably about 7 minutes. Now I wanted to clean up around the rim so you don't see any glue in there. And I thought, you know what would be really pretty? If I put some more glue and then sprinkled some orange glitter, because you know how sunflowers have that depth of the orange in there? Friends, this turned out so cute adding the glitter. If you're not a glitter person, just skip that part. You can maybe put some twine or another ribbon rolled around in there. It's up to you. But I loved the added glitter. I just made sure once it was dry, I got off all the excess so it didn't get all over my floor. And it had the most beautiful presence on a knob. I hope you try this one too. For this project, I'm going to be using all of these florals. They're all from the Dollar Tree, except for one I'll show you later in the video. I'm going to be using these harvest acorns, and then a whole bunch of these tiny pine cones. I thought about using this ribbon, but I just didn't want to take from the golden beauty that this wreath is going to become. I am going to use this burlap ribbon and then a wreath ring from the Dollar Tree floral section. Now, I always like to give my florals something to hold on to just so that you don't have glue going everywhere on your table. So I wrapped it and coiled it around. When I got to the end, I cut off the extra, put a little glue and clamped it down so that glue can dry, because you don't want to burn yourself through that mesh ribbon. It will go straight through it and burn your fingers. Now, here are the florals I'm using. This pretty white ditzy flower, these brown wheat sticks. I'm not going to use those sunflowers after all. These beautiful golden leaves and eucalyptus. By the way, that eucalyptus is so hard to pull off. Just a pre-warning. I'm also going to be using this golden fern. And then this is the pick that I get from Hobby Lobby. They are just as affordable as the Dollar Tree picks. And you get a whole bunch more on it, because they always have their picks on sale for 50% around the fall and Christmas seasons. All right, we're going to start with putting on all of our leaves first. I am going to layer on the golden eucalyptus leaf and the maple leaf. I'm going to just keep layering it, and then I'm going to start bringing in the golden fern. I'm tucking it underneath that wrapped coiled around ribbon. Remember how I said it was going to help us keep glue from going everywhere? Once I had the golden ferns in place, and this is a really substantial piece because it's so sparkly and glittery, I wanted to make sure that's towards the bottom of all the layers, so you see it poking through all the stuff up at the top. But once I had all that in place, I'm now going to just continue to fill in with more of the eucalyptus and more of the maple leaves. Once I can almost not see that ribbon coiled around anymore, I'm now going to bring in those wheat sticks, and I'm going to just tuck them into all these different areas, making sure that color is dispersed nicely throughout the wreath. Now at this point, it's really starting to look pretty good. And I decided I also wanted to bring in this muted boxwood that they have at the Dollar Tree during the fall season. I think it's so pretty and works so perfectly with all these tones. I'm just adding some glue, sneaking that down in there, and I'm looking for spots that are bald on the wreath that need something there, and these are great because they have a nice thick base at the bottom. Now I'm also going to bring in some of this ivory cream little tiny rosette. They also sell these at the fall time, and I'm going to put those all around the edge. I like how they kind of jiggle a little bit. They're long and a little bit wispy, and it's perfect to add on this wreath. I'm also going to use any olive green leaves that I'm finding on any of these picks. Now this is the end where I'm bringing on this pick from Hobby Lobby that I just think this little wispy flower is so pretty. It's going to give the wreath a lot of movement. Whenever I'm making wreaths, I like to have layers and movement so it looks like they're real florals. Now to finish the wreath, this part was so fun. I loved having all of this come together. To finish the wreath, I'm now adding on my pine cones and my harvest acorns. I think this is such a stunning wreath to put in your home, especially because right now the trending color is butter yellow, which is so funny how colors trend sometimes. But I just think that this wreath is super simple to make. All it really is layering on a whole bunch of these similar tones. It reminds me of when winter is coming and the fall season is almost done. You'll start to see those leaves turn to a buttery yellow goldish color, and it's so pretty. I hope you give this wreath a try. We're going to build upon our supplies as we go, but our starting thing we need in hand are a tower of tumbling blocks. These blocks I get from the Dollar Tree, and you get so many to work with in the pack. Now they're supposed to be the Jenga version of the game, but a smaller condensed size, which is so great for DIY crafts. Now I'm taking the first row of 3, zigzagging some glue across it so every block has some glue, and then I'm going to continue the pattern that they have inside the packaging, 3 going one way, 3 going the other way, zigzagging the rows back and forth with the stack of 3 clustered together. I'm going to continue doing this layer by layer, adding in my glue, and the first tower we're making is going to have 10 rows. The second tower we're making is going to have 14 rows. All of this comes from the one pack. Super simple to do this part. And to make sure they're straight, I keep putting it on the side of the table, kind of rolling it around and putting my hands on the sides to straighten it out as much as possible. But it's okay if it's not perfectly straight, because that gives it that darling farmhouse charm to it. Now I'm going to add on quite a bit of red paint. I really want the paint to go between all of the rows of these blocks so you don't see that wood in between and it looks like one unit. You could also paint these green if you have green apples in your home or you prefer green apples. You can do all sorts of things, make them into pumpkins. I love these tumbling blocks. Now I'm taking this large craft stick. I'm going to do a water stain on it, and I just have a jar with water, some brown paint, a little bit of black paint. I mix it all together and it absorbs into these craft sticks beautifully. Once it was dried, I'm going to go ahead and paint on the word apples with a small tip brush. And I always like to just put my paint into the cap of my paint bottle. And I use that instead of getting out a whole nother plate to make another mess. And I'm going to make these 25 cents. I remember when I used to make everything 5 cents and 10 cents. Not anymore. Things are so much more expensive now. So I was like, I'll make these 25 cents. And realistically, it should have been like 50 cents or 75 cents. But anyway, once my paint on that was done, I'm now going to do a little bit of distressing. I'm sanding, and I'm coming in with a black ink pad that's kind of dried out. I don't want it to be too saturated on this ink pad. And I'm just kind of toughing it up, adding some texture, some depth. This is really going to give it that farmhouse charm to it for the fall season. Now I'm taking some twine, once that was all dry. I'm going to wrap it around 2 or 3 times, and then I'm going to tie it nice and tight. I'm going to take my apple sign, glue that right on, and you don't have to do the apple sign, but I just think it adds so much whimsy to it for the fall season. If the whimsy thing is not your thing, you can leave that part off. I'm using my miter shears to cut this twig down to size, and I'm adding a really nice dollop of glue on the top of these apples because I want to roll the sides of this twig in that glue so it's going up the sides, and it really helps it lock it on a lot better. So I'm rolling it around for both of them, and while the glue is still hot and easy to stick something to, I'm going to add on some moss. I'm going to compress it into the glue without burning my finger, and I add quite a bit, and once it's dry I pull away the extra I don't want. Now I'm adding on a raffia bow right into the center of the tall apple, and I'm going to add some buttons as well because I think this is just so whimsical and charming. I'm going to put that right in the middle of that raffia bow. And then to complete the look of this, I decided I didn't want to do a bow and a button on the smaller apple, but I did want to still put something. So I'm going to add on a leaf, and I also added a leaf to the taller apple too. You'll see it in the finished look, but that's it. So cute, so fun to make. For this project, we're using this large wooden leaf, and you can use any of their wood cutouts that they have at the Dollar Tree, some fabric, some of these long shish kebab skewer sticks, and some of these wood finial pieces. I get these from Hobby Lobby when they're on sale, and this is the brand. This pack was $1.49 for all of these little finial pieces. They almost look like knobs, but I'm pretty sure they're labeled finials. Anyway, I put my leaf down on my fabric, and I'm cutting out the appropriate size that I need that's going to fit the leaf. Now tell me if I'm the only one, but I cannot craft on a messy table. I got to clean as I go, friends. I just do. So you're going to see, this is like real footage, not cutting it out. I cut out a lot of this kind of stuff so that you all don't have to deal with that, but I just can't handle it. I fold the fabric up and I put it to the sides. So later on when I go to clean everything up, it's so much easier. Do you all do this too? Do you clean as you craft? I can't help it. Maybe it's just the mom in me. I don't know. Now for this part, I'm adding on some glue, just a bead of glue going down, and I'm folding it over to give it a nice finished side. I wanted to clean it up so it had clean lines where it looked like it was sewn, and you could sew it. If you're not a seamstress, if you don't sew, you can use hot glue. I did both of the longer sides of this tapestry we're making, and now I'm going to cut down those skewer sticks, shish kebab sticks. I think the longer ones are skewer sticks. Am I wrong? Am I right on this? Let me know. We don't really barbecue. We really don't barbecue as a family. We're more of a casserole, meat and potatoes kind of family. Okay, I cut down those sticks. I squished the ends just a little bit with some needle nose pliers just so that the wood would fit nicely on those dowels and the finials together. Put a little bit of glue, locked them in on the ends, and now I'm going to pull that fabric over this rod that we've just made. And it just has the nicest highest end look. I love how it looks. Now I have this little mini iron here in my craft room. I'm just going to iron out the fabric just a little bit because then it'll make it look nice and tidy and clean. Once I got all those wrinkles out, I'm going to add on a little bit of glue because it drives me crazy, you guys. Why does the Dollar Tree put holes in these wood pieces? I wish they didn't do this. But I'm going to add a piece of a popsicle stick on the back, and then I'm going to add a little bit of a glue dot to fill it in. I could use wood putty, but it takes a really long time to dry sometimes. So I went ahead and did that really quick, and now I'm going to give everything a coat of white paint. I'm going to run my hot glue all over the backside and then press it down on there. You can paint your leaf whatever you want. Please have fun, make it your own. Use whatever fabric you want, but I thought because I was going with such a bold fabric, I would go more neutral. You could even stain your wood leaf if you would like. So many options, really, truly. Now I'm going to take some twine, simply tie knots on both sides, and before I lock in that second knot, I put a little dot of hot glue so it doesn't come untied, and then I'm just going to cut off those twine pieces, and it's ready to be hung up in your home. I fell in love with this sign at the Dollar Tree. I love that it had chocolate brown glitter. I thought that was so pretty. A very vintage look. I'm going to bring in some foam, some of these cute wood boxes, this gorgeous ribbon that I got from the Dollar Tree. All these are from the Dollar Tree. Some craft sticks, and then I'm going to bring in some white Bobo hydrangea floral picks from the Dollar Tree. I feel like the white, or it's like ivory cream, I feel like the contrast with all the bright orange is going to look so pretty. Now I popped off the back of the hanging tag on the sign. I'm bringing these two boxes together with some hot glue, adding some hot glue in the boxes, and I already pre-cut down this foam, but it's one of the foam blocks from the Dollar Tree. I'm just going to glue that right down inside the box. I want this sign to be able to stand up vertically. So I'm taking those craft sticks and I'm going to glue them onto the back of the sign. I'm going to make sure I get the measurement right of how long and how high I want this to be. I will say I do regret cutting off a little bit too much, so make sure you double check before you cut. And then push that down into the foam. Add in lots of hot glue to really stabilize that sign so it stands up nice and tall and straight. And I definitely pulled the sign back out, added some in the holes, and then put the sticks back down into the foam. And now we're going to conceal the box with that beautiful ribbon, and it's a great way to bring in some pattern. I'm making the ribbon be flush to the table, so there's a little bit of an overhang at the top of the box, so I don't have to paint the box. I can just conceal it with the ribbon. I'm going to pull back that little bit of that lip on the ribbon and the box, put a little bit of glue and pull it over, and now you can't even see the box. And it has such a store finish. It looks so nice once we put the florals in. I went all the way around the box. When I got to the other side, I went ahead and glued the rest of it down, but again, I like to have a nice finish. I'm going to fold under the ribbon so it doesn't look frayed. And then I'm going to add my glue, pulling it nice and tight. I don't want to put too much glue where it's coming out all over the place, enough that it sticks well, but it doesn't bleed through or spill out. And then I'm going to clean up that last. I'm going to add a little bit of glue right onto the ribbon, fold it, tuck it under, and glue it in place. You could also put a little button on the back so it looks like a little shirt. That could be super cute. I wish I had done that. Why didn't I do that when I was making this? I'm not sure, but that would have been very cute. Now let's bring in those beautiful cream Bobo hydrangea florals. At least that's what I think this is. They look like hydrangeas, but they don't look like typical hydrangeas. I think they're Bobo hydrangeas. I'm going to trim those all down to size, and I'm going to really fill in this box. I think I used 2.5 picks. I think that's about what I used. And I'm just going to fill it in until I like the way that looks. And the contrast of the cream with the orange is so pretty. This project truly is super fast and super cute when it's all done. We're using a wooden pumpkin from the Dollar Tree, a stick from my yard, a long craft stick, and then this spindle, thread spindle spool from Hobby Lobby. I get them when all their wood pieces are on sale. I put some glue inside of the wood spool, put the craft dowel into it and let it dry, and I put some scissors underneath it to level it up so it doesn't dry crooked. I popped off the stem off of the wooden pumpkin, and I'm using my miter shears to cut down that wooden stick from the yard. Now I'm going to go ahead and glue on my pumpkin onto the dowel. I put some glue and I'm twirling it around. That way it's going to bind really well together. And then I'm going to come on the back side and I'm going to zigzag glue back and forth. This is going to cause this pumpkin to never pop off. It's going to have a nice clean seal. With that glue still being warm, I'm going to take that stick from my yard. I'm going to swirl it around in the glue, making sure I get all around the sides. And once the glue is dry, now I'm going to paint the pumpkin to the desired color that I would like. I wanted to start with a really rustic orange. And if the paint looks kind of funny, that's because it's the paint left over from another project I'll show in another video on another day. But I ended up adding some flour. Whenever I want to make my paint thicker, I add a little bit of flour to it. It has a nice thick consistency. So I painted my pumpkin a rustic orange. I'm painting the spool and the craft dowel a white. And now I'm going to come in, and when I add on a lighter orange, that orange mixed with a little bit of white, it is going to have the most beautiful texture on this pumpkin. You can see all of these layers coming through on the paint, And I'm going to just keep mixing with the paint, keep adding on a little bit more orange, a little bit of white, until I get it to the color I want. But I wanted to go with a very rustic looking pumpkin where it has a nice farmhouse look. This is so fast. At this point, other than waiting for the paint to dry, this project probably took me about 10 minutes because I was using my heat gun to dry the paint quicker. At the bottom of the spool, I'm going to take some beautiful ribbon. I bought this years ago at Michael's. Michael's has some really pretty ribbon. So does Hobby Lobby, but I really love the ribbon at Michael's. And I'm just going to glue that around the spool, adding a little bit of texture and pattern to the bottom. I thought it would be super cute and sweet to add a button to the back of it that's green. I'm going to add a little hot glue to it, glue it in place. Now up at the top of the pumpkin, I wanted to bring in some more texture, some more fabric. I'm going to add on these faux leaves from a pick that I had from the Dollar Tree. Then I'm going to add on a Darling Sweet double looped bow from twine. And then really just to finish off the look, I'm going to add on 2 buttons, one layered on top of each other, right in the center of that bow. Friends, this project was so fast and so cute. And again, pretty much a whole bunch of scraps that I had on hand. The only thing that really wasn't a scrap was the spool. But if you are a seamstress and have a whole bunch of spools, you could do this with those as well. It's such a cute project and on a crafter's budget, which is my favorite. I picked up 2 of these 12 by 12 wood plaques and some of these craft sticks from the Dollar Tree. We're going to start by gluing these pieces together. We're going to add more supplies in just a few minutes, which are florals and some drop cloth and paint. But for now, let's get this base part put together. Now I zigzagged my glue back and forth. I cut off the strands that were on these wood plaques, and I brought those holes together so I can conceal it underneath all the florals we're going to put on this. Now you can see that I'm layering on these craft sticks first across the seam line, and then I went over like a bridge, making sure it was nice and secure. Now I wanted to go with a deep oak color, maybe not so much oak, but a deep chestnut brown. I thought this was so pretty with these golden, beautiful fall colors that come from all of these florals at the Dollar Tree. Now, I felt like this is one of those times where this gold fern pick works beautifully with all of these tones. And then I brought on this large peony. I had this on hand. That one is from Hobby Lobby, but they do have lots of different picks that are peonies at the Dollar Tree. This is just one I had on hand. And I'm coming in with some more greenery and then these little tiny white florals. This is one of the brand new picks they have at the Dollar Tree. It is so impressive how the Dollar Tree florals look now. I remember back in the day when I first started Dollar Tree Crafts, and they have come a long way. Now for the drop cloth, I'm just going to simply glue that down right on top of those stems, those florals that I'm concealing underneath it. And you can see that I didn't even paint that part there because there's no need to waste that paint. And then to finish it up, I'm just going to tuck in some more of these golden leaves, this eucalyptus, the top of the drop cloth pocket. And that's it. Isn't it so simple but stunning? For this project, I found this really cool frame. It's got a lot of texture on it, and it actually is a little bit of a shadow box. This darling pumpkin beaded strand. What are these things called? Garlands. We're just going to call it that for now. I picked that up from Dollar Tree as well as the frame, and then I have this piece of scrapbook paper. This project is so easy, so easy. I took apart the frame. Now you can see where it's got that foam in there. This is why it's a shadow box frame. I pulled off that medallion on the artwork. I didn't want that. I'm going to repurpose the backing of this cardboard, put some glue, stick it onto a scrapbook paper that I feel is more in season for what I'm going for this project. And then I'm just going to pop it back in. Push down the tabs, and then I can flip it over and work on the front side. Now for the pumpkin, I didn't want the twine on it. I didn't want the beads on it. So I'm going to use my pliers because it was actually nailed on there or stapled on there pretty tightly. I just popped that off. And because I'm dealing with glass, I don't want to put a whole bunch of hot glue on this. It could cause the glass to expand or shrink and cause it to shatter. So I used primarily E6000 and then a tiny little bit of hot glue, and I let it cool just for a second or two before I put it down so it didn't crack the glass. Now once that was on, here is the coolest part about this frame. Friends, if you can get your hands on frames that have texture, this is why I wanted to share this project today. I love textured frames because when you bring in some dry brushing of any color, it really brings the frame to life. Look at the pretty details on this frame. And I'm just very lightly, I don't want it going down into the crevices. I want to hit the top surface of the frame. So I'm very, very lightly brushing across that texture, adding on that paint so you can see the contrast. And then when I go and give it a little sand, which is coming next, I have to let it dry first. I'm going to do a little bit of sanding around the sides, and it brings forth the most beautiful frame. They sell frames like this, so expensive, it's ridiculous. And this is just a $1.25 frame from the Dollar Tree. Just adding some white paint. You could seriously find frames like this that are anywhere between, I don't know, $10 to $15 at like Home Goods. And I made it for $1.25 just by adding on white paint. Now, this is a technique I really, really love. I came up with it over the springtime. I wanted to have a bow at the top of a hang-up piece, and I realized, why don't I just glue the bow to the back of the frame? So I tied a bow, put a little bit of a hot glue on the bow part so it doesn't come untied, and then glued it to the back of the frame. And to clean it up, I do recommend putting a little piece of fabric back there, but that's it. Super easy project and so beautiful. This craft project I consider to be an heirloom project. So it's going to be a little bit more work, a little more advanced, but I promise you it's going to be amazing. I love this project so much. We're using these wood planks from the Dollar Tree, some thicker craft sticks, some of these metal hooks, and some of these metal library label tags. I'm going to link the metal tags. I get them from Amazon, but I promise you, friends, this project is such a fun one. Now I lined up 6 of these wood planks all in a row, and I'm going to stabilize them so they stay together with these craft sticks. I'm going to put a whole bunch of them back here so it's nice and supported and it doesn't fall apart. I like to make quality things here on my channel. Once I had all my craft sticks glued in place, I'm now going to flip it over and I'm going to paint it. Now the color I decided to go with was a beautiful forest green color. I'm going to bring in some marbling with dry brushing to really lift the color more. So first is the super dark forest green. I'm going to paint it all the way around, and I even flip it over and paint on the backside around the edges. And I'm also going to paint 6 more of those wood tiles because this is going to be put on the back, so it has a very nice finished back, because again, I'm trying to make an heirloom piece that I'll keep forever and maybe pass down to my kids someday. Now I'm going to paint all around these sides really well, and then once everything is dry, I'm now going to move on to putting on some of the metal, or at least prepping for it. I'm lining up all of my label tags, and I'm going to use my pencil to create little holes that I know I can mark the spots that I need to have the exact punch. This is called the Big Bite. This is the larger version of the Craftober. I love this tool. I've had this tool for years. I highly recommend it if you are a big time crafter like I am. The Craftober is fantastic for smaller reach, but the Big Bite has an even further reach. This is how you change the settings up at the top for the hole punches to be bigger or smaller depending on the size of the hole you want. You're going to line it up and then push down. Look at how easy it went through the wood. I'll make sure I link this tool down below. You don't have to have it. You can use a drill. You can even try to use the Craftober, but the reach is not as far, which is why I'm using the Big Bite. But I highly recommend it. And if you don't have that, you can definitely use a drill. Now I'm going to start doing that marbleizing technique that I talked about. I'm coming back in with a lighter shade of green, and I'm going to dry brush all over it. This is going to give it a very vintage look to it. It reminds me a lot of The Little Princess. They had a lot of emerald green in that movie. Anyway, once that paint was dry, I went ahead and put on the metal tag labels using my brads. I'm now going to flip it over, and I'm going to open up the brad legs. And I decided to stabilize it some more, so I'm going to add on even more craft sticks because I really want this thing to be sturdy. Now before I put on the back tiles, we need to be able to hang it up. Okay, so hear me out. This is meant to hang up keys, but this could also be used to hang up Christmas stockings. I think this would be such a pretty thing to have in your home for the Christmas season. Now I'm taking some twine. I cut it down to size. I created a little loop so that I would be able to get a screw or a nail or whatever I want to have it hung up with at the top. And now before I put on the next tile, I'm going to glue down those little brads so they don't come loose. And I'm going to add a whole bunch of glue so that way the tiles are really glued together. I made sure I put my twine hook on the other side, and then now I'm going to put down the last tile, gluing the whole thing together. Friends, after making this, I have decided I'm going to make an even bigger version than this, and I want it to be an advent calendar for the Christmas season. So I'm not sure if I'm going to paint it red or if I'm going to paint it white and have red accents. I'm not sure yet. I might do white so I can use it more than just Christmas because I really love doing countdowns in our house. Anyway, I'm now going to do some more of that marble texture work on the back of it, bringing in that lighter green, and I'm just going to keep brushing all over it, all these different strokes. And once it was all dry and I got it to the look that I wanted, I'm now going to sand around the edges to give it that farmhouse vintage look, or even almost a shabby chic look. I'm just going to sand it to my liking, and now I'm going to create my hole marks for my hooks. You don't have to use a drill for this, but I highly recommend it because trying to screw in little hooks is just a killer on your hand. I have a drill in my craft room. It's my drill, and I love this thing. I highly recommend having a drill in your craft room because you can do so many cool things with it. Just remember to go slow and always keep your hands and fingers back. Now I'm going to put a tiny dot of glue, and you see how easy that twists in? So much easier than me just trying to just twist it in without that pre-drill hold. And now at this point, all the hooks are in, all the metal tags are on. I'm now going to cut down some pretty damask paper that's neutral with gray and white. I'm going to cut them down to size, and then I'm going to put some adhesive on the back and slip that down into those metal tags and glue them into place. You don't have to put glue, but I wanted to put glue because I love how neutral this paper is, but it's got some texture to it, some pattern. So I want to keep it in there forever. I'm gluing that all down in, and that is it. Couldn't you imagine this even bigger for like an advent calendar? So pretty. I hope you will try this one. This is definitely an heirloom piece. I am using a metal box, some foam, some ribbon, and then this darling pick pumpkin that they have in their gardening fall section. I took the metal rod and I twisted it back and forth probably about 5 times, and it popped off pretty easy. Now I'm going to take my foam. I'm adding on E6000 first because we're going to be gluing to metal and I don't want it to pop off. And then I'm going to also add on some hot glue for the long-term, short-term hold. Now, once that foam was inside the box, I'm going to take my ribbon. I want to have a long, about 10 inches, maybe 12 inches long, coming off the box before I start to glue it into place. Now, before I start putting on the ribbon, because I'm dealing with metal, I'm going to put a glue dot first, push down the ribbon, then start adding on my hot glue. And I'm wanting to make sure the ribbon is flush with the table and the bottom of the box. I go all the way around adding some glue, adding a little bit of the adhesive, and this is going to make sure this ribbon stays on there nicely. Once I get to the end, wrapping all the way around the box, I want to make sure there's a tail as well as the front. And then I'm going to tie a double knot. I'm going to tie a double knot, but not tying it too tight where it's going to pull the ribbon funny and it's going to cause problems on the box. When I'm done with tying the knot, I'm going to take my scissors and cut a dovetail cut at the end of those ribbons. And then I'm going to add on a bow. So I tied a bow with the same ribbon, and I'm just going to glue that right above that knot that we did earlier with the ribbon that went around the box. Glue that into place. And I will say at the end when I reveal it, I realized I didn't fluff my bow in the big reveal, and that really bothered me. I like a fluffed bow and I forgot to fluff it. So please ignore my messy bow at the end of the video on the project. Just imagine it nice and full and fluffed. But to clean up the edges of the box, the top of it, I'm now coming around with that hot glue and I'm pulling the ribbon down around the rim so it has a nice clean finish. And now we can add in our metal pumpkin. I put a little hot glue, stuck it into the foam, and then I'm going to add a whole bunch more hot glue to lock that pumpkin into place. And now comes the fun part, doing the floral work. Oh friends, I love orange, and it is such a bright color. I know a lot of people, it's not their favorite color, but I love orange, and I love in the fall. The orange looks almost like fire, like it's so bright and beautiful. These florals that I found, I went with the brightest oranges I could find, but then I did bring in some neutrals with a deeper orange and then a more salmon orange. I am just layering in all these flowers and really having so much fun getting this look. Super easy. You just trim down these florals from the picks, and then I added in some sunflowers, some daisies. This really bright one, I'm not sure what it is, but I added that in, and then I'm also adding in a coral peony flower. All florals from the Dollar Tree. So fun to work with. And this is pretty much it. And I decided at the last second to add one more tiny little thing. I had these cupcake picks on hand. I thought they were so cute. I thought, why not add a couple little pumpkins in here so it looks like a darling pumpkin patch? And it's super simple. I'm just poking those right down in there, and it really does complete the look. Has such a beautiful presence on a table. I think this is so pretty, and I hope you will give it a try. This project is so simple to recreate. I'm going to use this wood plank, this leftover artwork from this 2026 calendar, Lovely Landscapes. Friends, get this calendar. It has so many gorgeous artworks in it for the months of 2026. I have this pick from the Dollar Tree, and then this pick I got from Hobby Lobby when it was on sale, and then a little scrap of fabric. Now I'm going to start by putting some glue on my wood plank, and I'm going to line up what's left over of the artwork from a different project I had done. I laid it all down, rolled it all out, pressed it down, and now I'm going to cut it. Now I'm cutting the scissors with my left hand. I'm not left-handed. My son is left-handed, but I'm not left-handed. I just felt like it was the easiest way for me to cut it. But I went ahead, roughed up the sides with some sandpaper, and now I'm just going to simply glue on these little greenery picks from the Dollar Tree. And I cut apart the pick from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just going to take all the pieces off that I want and glue those into place. Now, before I put the pumpkin down, I'm going to put down the fabric first. And you're going to see here that I flapped over the top part of the fabric just a little bit so it has a little bit of a collar up there. Bringing it around to the back side, and then I'm just going to add some hot glue, pull it nice and tight in place, and then put some more hot glue and pull over the other side. Now when it comes to the bottom, I want to make sure we have a nice clean finish on the bottom because I'm really about having clean finishes. I'm going to make sure that I cut off any extra fabric that's going to just be in the way and make it too bulky. And then I'm going to add some hot glue, fold in the sides just a little bit, kind of like you would a present, and then pull that fabric up and lay it down nice and smoothly. And I'm going to use my brayer because it's just is going to allow me to be able to lay it flat without burning my fingers. Now I'm going to add in that pumpkin. And the last thing I'm going to do is just do a little bit of distressing with some brown paint around the sides. But that's optional, friends. This is so easy and elegant. I hope you give this one a try. When I first started doing Dollar Tree projects in the fall season, I bought a ton of these wood pumpkins, all these different sizes, all these different kinds. Today we're going to take 3 different ones that I had on hand, and we're going to turn them into a beautiful sign. Now I'm going to be using these scrapbook papers that I have on hand, but you can use whatever you want. I am going to be taking the 3 pumpkins, laying them out how I think they will look good, and then coordinating the papers so the papers also look good. To put the scrapbook paper on the pumpkin, it's super simple. Add glue. I'm just using hot glue versus like a adhesive glue that you would use for scrapbooking. I'm going to just center the pumpkin right on the paper. And these papers are 12 by 12 in size from scrapbooking. I'm going to roll it down with my brayer just to make sure all the glue is nice and spread out so it's really adhering to each other. I'm going to do all 3 of these pumpkins. And then this next step is super easy. And honestly, I kind of love tearing the paper. It's kind of therapeutic, ripping the paper. This was very calming, this part for me. Maybe if you're feeling like you're feeling frustrated in your day, this would be a good project to sit there and just rip the paper. I don't know. But I will tell you, when I was doing this, I was really relaxed while I was ripping around this paper because I just loved seeing that the edging ripping against the wood pumpkin. It came off really easy and a nice clean line. And then to go back in to really define the pumpkin shape, I'm just using a piece of sandpaper. Again, this part was really therapeutic for me. I'm just going to sand all around those edges. And I am not going to put anything on the stem. I really like the pumpkin having the same paper on the stem as it is the pumpkin. But you could definitely put some twine on it if you want to, or paint it. It's up to you with what you would like to do for that pumpkin. I would love to know what you think. What would you put on the pumpkin stem? I'm just going to keep mine paper. Would you keep it paper, or would you put something else on it? Now I'm going to bring these 3 pumpkins together. This is so easy, friends. At this point, I'm speeding it up for you all, but it took me maybe like 6 minutes at this point of just putting on paper, ripping it, sanding it, gluing it together. This project was so fast. I think total time it took me was maybe about 10-15 minutes. So quick. Now don't be afraid to shift things around when you glue stuff together. You can see I lifted it back up before the glue locked in, and I'm shifting it because I want to make sure the pumpkins are straight. Now here's this next step. Friends, you could totally skip this part. I decided I want my pumpkins to stand vertically. So I had this cute little palette that I had painted orange for another project on another day, and I hijacked it. And I decided if I cut it in half, it looks like a Twix. Heidi, don't think about chocolate. I'm really trying hard. It's October 1st, and I'm trying really hard to be good about not eating as many sweets so I can get healthy. Anyway, it looks like a Twix bar. We're going to skip past that. Just ignore me. But I'm going to glue these pumpkins into that crevice of those wood pieces. And I decided to cover it up with a piece of ribbon. Again, you could totally skip this if you just want to lean it up against something or even put a ribbon on the back to hang it up. So I'm just covering it up real quick with this piece of ribbon. This part honestly looks really janky, but I promise in the end, you're not even going to see that part. So I am now going to add on this adorable pumpkin bottle, pumpkin punch, darling little decor piece that I found. And I wasn't sure how I was going to use it, but when I cluster it with all these pumpkins, it just comes together so cute. I could totally see this being something that they sell at Home Goods, at Hobby Lobby, all sorts of stores. So, so cute. Now I've added on some greenery, some leaves. I'm bringing in this beautiful ribbon that they have at the Dollar Tree. I love this ribbon. I think it's so cute. And then I'm going to add on a pumpkin right in the center, a little foam pumpkin, and it just has the cutest finished look. As I say to all of you every single time, I hope you get a chance to be in your craft room. You get to make something beautiful for your home, and you just have some you time. Some time to come down from your day, some time to just work out your thoughts. I love crafting and sitting in my room and just listening to something that's calming on the radio or watching a Hallmark movie. All right, friends, that's it. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It always helps out my channel. Leave a comment down below. Let me know which project you like, which one you think you would try. Don't forget to check out the video that I'm linking where I'm going over my Craftober and all the updates in my life. I'm linking it right here at the end. Until the next episode, bye friends.